Welcome back to Tip of the Spear with your Missoula County Commissioners. Today, we're joined by Shayla Beaumont. She's the director of Missoula Project Beacon at All Nations Health Center. And we're going to be continuing our conversation from our last episode about human trafficking and its impact on Missoula County because this is January Human Trafficking Awareness Month.
Shayla, this is Dave Strohmeyer. Thanks so much for joining us. And could you just kick things off here by telling us a little bit about your background, Beacon Project, and what your role is as director of that?
Yeah, definitely. Missoula Project Beacon, we're housed under All Nations Health Center on West Central there by the Stevens Outlet Mall. And Missoula Project Beacon, we provide intensive case management, trainings, outreach for Indigenous survivors experiencing human trafficking. And my role as director is just to provide trainings, participate in outreach, not only in the city of Missoula, but also for Montana as well, working with tribal nations, letting them know we're here as a resource, providing intensive case management to survivors in Missoula. And we also get a lot of referrals from tribal nations as well, so collaborating with them. And yeah, just trying to provide easier access and cultural support to healing.
That's great. Shayla, this is Josh Slotnick, one of the other commissioners. So you mentioned training and outreach that Missoula Project Beacon does. What are some of those programs?
Yeah, definitely our training programs, our local organizations such as the YWCA, providing them cultural competence trainings, kind of how to work with the Indigenous survivor, and not only the YWCA, but also organizations that we work with, working with police, and also current outreach. A lot of our social media, we do a lot of safety tips, safety planning ideas on there as well, letting them know of other resources available in the community. We team up with the university a lot for events, for donation events, and yeah, we're very grateful for the community of Missoula. We have a lot of other organizations and businesses hosting events for us or donations. Along with the current outreach, we go to campus, we let the students know we're here, we let the Crime Victim Advocates Office know we're here, just trying to always stay in strong communication with the advocacy groups here, the legal resources, the legal support.
Just going back to expand on something you said earlier as far as outreach efforts go with other tribal nations. Can you talk just a little bit about that? We're familiar with CSKT since Missoula County and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes and the Flathead Reservation share boundaries here. But is it the case that when you're interacting with and working with survivors that depending on their tribal affiliation, you would reach out to their respective tribal nation for coordination, or just how does all of that work?
Our tribal nations, there definitely are a huge support in our cultural healing, not only on working with cases and collaborating together, but in Montana, we have 8 tribal nations, and in Missoula, we see a various number of enrolled members, whether it's Blackfeet, Crow, Chippewa Cree, CSKT. So we definitely reach out to those tribal nations to get cultural healing support, getting in touch with elders, getting in touch with cultural practitioners, and just making sure that we're respecting the uniqueness of each tribal identity and cultural belief, and collaborating on cases, developing safety plans, working together to create task forces on those reservations, buckling down on response, prevention, offering them trainings or other resources available, and just trying to keep that tight connection and tight working relationship.
I need to have a better understanding of what does cultural competency mean? I mean, so before the Beacon Project, how did this engagement work? And then when Beacon Project came online or this outreach started to happen, what were some of the kind of examples of the cultural competency we want to encourage?
I feel like before Beacon Project, the access wasn't really there, or like connecting with each tribal nation. And each tribe is very different. Their beliefs are different. Their ways of healing different. The woman or man's role is, the different beliefs. And I feel before Beacon Project, a lot of working professionals didn't have access to that on each tribal nation, or didn't have those connections for their survivors that they were working with or their program. And I feel that with now with the Missoula Project Beacon, with our trainings that we offer, or just even me wanting to come and connect with you or talk about cultural competency, and just stressing, the different tribal entities and how they differ, but also being able to facilitate that space or facilitate that conversation and getting you connected with the right parties on the reservation. And, just so we can provide the correct healing processes for our survivors.
Oh,
I don't want to say correct, but their beliefs, what
Yeah.
they.
no, that's helpful. Thank you.
Shayla, it seems like this work crosses a whole bunch of different professional discipline boundaries. There's some legal stuff in here. It sounds like some social work as well as kind of some marketing and getting the word out. So what's your background? So it's a professional background so that this works out for you.
I graduated from University of Montana with criminal justice. My dream was to work in victim services, especially for Indigenous populations, and providing that cultural support. And I've served as a domestic violence advocate here at the YWCA. I've served for Mountain Home Montana, the local young mothers shelter, and also working on the reservation in a school setting. So, yeah, just a lot of direct services and a lot of
Got it.
emergency.
Sounds like you're the right person for the job.
Thank you.
So one goal of Project Beacon is to train, as you've been explaining, train the community on how to spot indicators of human trafficking. Can you give us an overview of what these indicators look like and what our listeners can be aware of?
Human trafficking in Montana, I know a lot of our community members and a lot of our people in towns don't think it happens here when it very much does. Some of the indicators, just a very submissive person. I don't want to just say like a female survivor, but I mean also males and two-spirit as well. Just kind of that very jaded social interaction. They won't interact with you. They won't tell their living situation. Very timid. Being very standoffish to those in authority, not only to law enforcement, but also if they're minors, very standoffish to their principal, their parents, their friends, their coaches. And not only that, but also not giving you a clear answer on their living situation. Maybe it doesn't make sense, the party that they are living with or the arrangement, or if they can't give exact details about it, whether it's the address or who's taking care of them. And I mean, even as for adults, if they won't tell you what the living arrangement looks like, whether the rent or how they're paying for it when applying for assistance. Can I give an example about when I was at?
That would
Yeah,
be super
anything you
helpful.
want.
Yeah.
I was at Charter Spectrum and I was returning my Wi-Fi router, and there was this gentleman and a woman in front of me. I don't want to say woman because I feel like she was a teenager. It was very obvious that she was 14. She was dressed in like a little tank top, barely clean, and he was dressed in a nice suit. And he said that he was paying for her apartment. He was paying for her Charter Wi-Fi, so to put the bill under his name. But they needed her information for the lease agreement. And he said, well, she is my daughter, but I just don't have a social security number. And he's like, well, can you provide identification? Which is a huge one because that's another thing. They won't have access to their identification, whether it's tribal enrollment cards, their social security cards, their IDs, even when applying for jobs, right? And the male that she was with, even though he said he was her dad, and then it went to being a family friend. And this whole time, this poor young woman was scared. She was shrunken down. She wouldn't even look at me because I kept trying to make eye contact, being an advocate and picking up on those red signs, trying to offer my assistance or seeing if she was okay and if she was safe. But the Charter Spectrum worker must have picked up something was wrong, and he was like, I'm sorry, I cannot offer you services right now. I need this information. But just the stories of the living situation and why she was even here in Montana, at first it went from a custody battle to that he was just helping out a family friend. So just kind of paying attention to the stories and seeing if they do match up or if they do change. And then just seeing in person just kind of how distraught the young woman was.
So then what happens?
I mean, I'm not a cop. I couldn't intervene. But I just kept trying to make, eye contact. And I worked with a Charter Spectrum worker, and told him I was an advocate and like what we could look out for and if he felt comfortable even reporting the gentleman because he said that he had seen him a few times before.
Okay.
Well, Shayla, I mean, that's a great point for our listeners if they're either working in an establishment that would see these sorts of incidents unfold right before their eyes, or if you're just a concerned citizen. At what point would it be appropriate to call 911? Or I guess I'm just searching around for what if folks are looking for something proactive to do. What's the best course of action?
Definitely keeping yourself safe first, because I definitely know that that guy knew I knew something wasn't right because he kept staring at me, kind of more so glaring. I would just feel like if it's safe right then and there to contact law enforcement or whoever's security, please go ahead and do it. But if it kind of gets in the way of your safety, maybe go to a safe place, whether that's your car, whether that's a different room in the building, but make sure you're safe first. And if you're not even comfortable of calling law enforcement, you don't always have to write a report, right? You could just tell them the incident, that what made you nervous or what made you worried, and you could just give some tips. And
Well, that's great practical advice. And I guess it just makes me wonder if there, and maybe you're already involved with this, but training that could be provided for store clerks. I mean, whoever might be out there interacting with the public in a way where transactions like what you witnessed might be taking place. I bet there are well-meaning folks out there that just aren't picking up on the signs and clues that you're immersed in every day, and were able to quickly figure out what was going on.
right. I was at the mall a few months ago, and just like you said, like just training our bystanders and training the people who work wherever in the community. And I was parked right outside of Red Robin. I was happy I got a close spot to the mall, and I had to take a work call, so I went back outside, and there was this guy filming me while I was walking to my car with his cell phone. And nobody told me, but it kind of was happening for a while because he had to have followed me to the entrance to my car. And then I turned around and I started recording him. I don't know what made me brave, but I started chasing after him. And then I went and told security his description, and, this just happened. And so please be on the lookout for him. But yeah, I mean, like
Wow.
just on our everyday activities, right? Like what are we missing, or what are we not catching, or what could we do?
Yeah,
Wow.
no kidding.
Shayla, you mentioned healing. It's a big part of this. So these situations just sound unimaginably awful, especially to those who have had no contact with this. What does a healing process look like for a young person? I'm thinking about a minor who's been trafficked. How can they be brought back to a sense of personal security and have some agency in the world?
For Project Beacon, offering that cultural support and definitely seeing with the minor, like what is their tribal affiliation? What is, if they are enrolled, if they're not? And human trafficking, manipulation, brainwashing are huge tools in the process, and just kind of giving them that indigenous tribal identity back and letting them give them that sense of self, and getting them into their right tribal beliefs, right? And not just assume that they're of a specific tribe, but actually kind of very finding out where they're from, and making sure that we get them in touch with the right cultural practitioner. And what does that look like to them, right? A man, a woman, or whoever, a young person, a peer support. Just with all the medical issues that come with it, definitely provide that at all nations.
Do you feel like people can come back from this?
Yes, that's one of my goals with Project Beacon, is just having that access to culture. A lot of, over the history, a lot of policy and a lot of laws went into effect so that our cultural ways were lost. So just kind of bridging that gap of intergenerational trauma and giving that sense of identity back to our indigenous, not only our survivors, but, like our indigenous people.
And I think it's important for folks to understand that how much time it takes to work through this struggle. It's if you call 911, or if you call Project Beacon, or you get into Mountain Home or YWCA. I mean, it's not quick, and I feel like folks aren't understanding that it can take multiple touches, or it often does take multiple touches, and appreciating that how much effort and time has to go into a person's healing.
It's not just a one step, right?
Right.
So, a part of our intensive case management and our cultural competency is just to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks, and that they know that we're here for them, and that we do have that cultural competency, trauma informed background.
And even this is something that for like, victims might not even know that they're being trafficked, or not even understand that they're a victim. And so how should we think about this when you're talking about young girls, young boys, two-spirit. And actually, can we go back to what's an appropriate definition of two-spirit? What's
A two-spirit is someone who identifies both as a man and a woman, so that's why we refer to them as two-spirit. But they're targeted just as much, if not more, for human trafficking. And, like, and especially in our youth, not a lot of households do support that. So we do have a lot of runaway. And just along with that brainwashing and manipulation that comes with human trafficking, and not having that support.
so people are put in these vulnerable situations without even maybe fully understanding that they are, and how do we reach them? How do we talk about that?
I always believe just letting them know we're here, not only just as Missoula Project Beacon, but just facilitating that safe conversation. Just like you mentioned, our youth or any other survivor doesn't always know that they're being trafficked. Just kind of listening to their situation and making sure that they know they're safe. A lot of our survivors are scared to come forward because they feel like they will be incriminated for the acts that were forced upon them, even though they are victims in this situation. So I just feel like facilitating that safe space, knowing that they are being listened to, and even just hearing their situation out loud might be like, oh, hey, that isn't right. Or having someone that they know and trust, like, no, you don't deserve that, or no, you don't have to do that to stay there or live there or for safety or for food or for protection.
Glad you brought up
Sure.
incrimination. I was wondering this. Given that someone who's been trafficked is often involved in something illegal, does that illegality and their sense of apprehension about the law enforcement system?
And reaching out for help and
Yeah.
trying to go forward with
Yeah.
prosecuting their trafficker, or whether that looks like getting a restraining order or any type of safety, really
Yeah.
going through law enforcement. And then, our traffickers, just how we talked about, they target vulnerabilities. And a lot of them, when they do, they will target and hold that record or hold those acts that they say are illegal over them, just kind of as that manipulation and to keep them under their control.
Phrase that gets kicked around sometimes is holistic wellness. Could you talk a little bit about how that factors into Project Beacon and in the healing process, and just how that weaves itself through the services you provide?
Part of our programming, when how we say road to healing, definitely just kind of teaching our participants, getting them in connection with the earth and that sort of holistic healing, whether that's teaching them about medicines. We go pick medicines with them so they can use smudging's a huge part of it, sage, sweetgrass, getting that protection, that mindfulness from that. And also ceremonies, if we don't have that available here in Missoula, try to make that happen, whether up to their discretion, support them in what they would like, and not just kind of put one ceremony or something on them. Totally up to what they would like. And even just kind of reconnecting them with their language, their indigenous language, and just kind of providing that cultural, I don't want to say identity, but I mean the cultural practices that have been lost or that they don't
Mm-hmm.
have access to here in the community or their family. Huge part of our program is the multi-generational leadership. Before a lot of our indigenous culture was lost, or before, just like we talked about the policies making our beliefs illegal, our family, the way our childbearing in our family, that was disrupted. So our multi-generational leadership is not only just peer support, but also learning from our elder women, our elder males, and just kind of learning that way. A lot of our cultural and tribal beliefs do come from that, learning from your elders and learning from the knowledge keepers. And just like your grandmother teaching you so you could teach your daughter or your child. So definitely just bringing that indigenous way back, not only for the family, but for our survivors as well.
Man, this seems like such an important work that you're doing. Are there any other Project Beacons around the state of Montana or elsewhere, a Billings Project Beacon or anything like it?
We have 6 other sister sites, but unfortunately they aren't in Montana. We have one in Albuquerque, we have one in Minnesota, we have Omaha, Nebraska, we have a few other locations, but unfortunately we don't have another Missoula Project Beacon in Montana.
So, Shayla, listening to this whole conversation, I'm kind of struck by the sense that there's a whole world out there that a lot of people don't know about, that unfortunately is a lot scarier and darker than the world we move about in. And I wonder, for someone like yourself who has to dabble in that world for work and then go back to much more about, I'm going to say, regular, healthy world for life. How do you hold both these things without it dragging you down?
There are moments where it does get hard, but just I've survived 5 kidnapping attempts here in Missoula and in Great Falls.
Can you tell us about that or explain it, whatever you're comfortable doing? Because I can't even conceive of what that would look like in Missoula.
I can't even conceive of one kidnapping attempt.
In Great Falls, we were doing some Christmas shopping, and this guy just walks up to me and says he knows me, and I said, "No, I don't. I don't know your name." He keeps bugging me for my name, and I just ignore him, hoping he's gonna go away. At first, he asks if I can go out to his car because he got a flat, and I said, "I don't know how to change a flat. You're gonna have to call your car insurance or call someone else to help you." And then he's like, "No, you need to get out to my car right now. You need to help me." And I said, "No, I don't know how to change a flat." And then I keep shopping, and he asks me to go out to his car again, and I tell him no. And he says that his girlfriend is the same size as me, and he bought her a dress for a gift. So he has to make sure that it's the right size so that he doesn't mess up on the gift or whatever. And this guy standing next to me who was shopping put his hand out in front of me towards that guy and said, she doesn't know you. You need to leave her alone, and we're calling the cops. And that guy just runs out of Ross. So there was that incident, and then I went to Bonner Park, and we were just walking back home, and this van starts following us, and I keep trying to take a picture of the license plate and the picture of the van to show police, and it must have been really paying good attention because every time I would pull up my cell phone, it would literally just go into an alley or it would turn off into an off street, and that happened like 3 times, and I just could not get a picture of the license plate, but it followed us for 6 blocks, more than that.
That's so infuriating. Race, gender, age.
We have this stereotype of a trafficker, like an attacker, of a big male. But when doing this work and when people want to learn about MMIW and want to learn about human trafficking, and then they do ask, what was your predator or what does that look like? Was it another indigenous person? And in all of my kidnapping attempts, none of them were indigenous. They were all white males or a white female.
Thanks.
And then, this was mentioned at the last one too, is just recognizing that victims can be anyone and look like anyone. And so it's incumbent upon the community to be, heads up and eyes wide open. And the more we can get the word out and more people can be aware, because this is definitely something that it was not on my radar.
Me either.
I like sharing my stories because it just to give that image and just to let people know, like, it does happen in Montana and it could happen to anybody, whether, just going to the park, going to the mall, it doesn't always have to be at a dark alleyway. All of my kidnapping attempts were in broad daylight.
And then the flip side is I don't want to cruise around my community being scared of everything. So what can we do to feel empowered and safe?
Yeah, right. Like, not to live in fear. Definitely know you're not alone. I feel like just kind of talking about human trafficking, not only as working organizations, but community members and supporting each other, like letting them know that it happens or providing safety. Like, can you call me while you're walking to your car? Or can you call me and let me know you made it to work? Or always just kind of checking in with one another, letting them know of the hotlines, even if you're scared or just want to talk about it, right? Like, if it is an intense topic, you don't want to talk with a family or friend, calling a hotline and just getting kind of, whether it's education or whether it's safety planning or just kind of to release and unload, right? Just of what's happening around us.
And so, Josh, you had kids and raising them. What did you go through?
I'm embarrassed to say I didn't think about these things enough. Normal things about who's dropping you off and where you're going to be. A lot of those safety things are just part of our family. But we didn't do those things out of real fear of kidnapping or trafficking. It was just more of, this is how a person should behave. And it would be really terrifying to have the knowledge you have and then be raising children simultaneously. I'm almost saying glad I didn't know is not right. I'm glad I do know these things, but it would be really difficult to know these things and not feel a little bit paralyzed.
That's a huge goal of Project Beacon, right? Like, just getting that outreach out and that education just to better support parents. And this topic is very heavy, and it's like, how do we communicate and educate each other without draining or getting that secondary trauma? But instead of draining each other. Like, how do we empower? Like, you're not alone. We're here working together, trying to keep our kiddos safe and just kind of facilitate those safe conversations so that we feel empowered and not scared of the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Shayla, my guess is most people listening to this, their only understanding of human trafficking will be from scenes in television or the movies. So if there's some real take-home message that you want to make sure our listeners understand about human trafficking in the real world, what would those be?
Definitely just checking in with your family, making sure you let your parents, your family, your grandparents, siblings know where you're at all times, even if it's just a simple text or a Snapchat. Letting them know where you're going to be, safety planning with your family when you're expected to be back, because a lot of this does happen in Montana, and like we talked about, a lot of people don't believe that it does happen, or just like you said, seeing in the movies. We've seen situations that aren't just shown on the movies of women being kidnapped and going to Europe. We have friends recruiting their friends into the life. We have parents doing it to children. We have organizations doing it to kiddos. So, I mean, and not just kids, but adults as well, right? So one thing I would just like for our listeners is that it does happen in Montana, and just to keep your guys' self safe, whether that's safety planning with your family, always telling them where you're going, knowing your resources, or knowing the emergency steps to take, whether that's calling law enforcement or what you feel comfortable doing.
Thanks.
Shayla, is there a website or a
good
point
call.
of contact if folks have questions about any of this?
Yeah, allnations.health/Project Beacon. Or we have an Instagram and Facebook page, Missoula Project Beacon. We are hiring for a full-time case management position that can be found on our website. Or if you wanted to reach out on social media, we could definitely forward you the application. But yeah, we are definitely hiring and always accepting volunteers or interns if you would like to go that route.
And if you're non-native, I mean, I would think that I'm not native, and I would feel hesitant about volunteering at All Nations or Project Beacon, even though this is something that I care very much about. And so what's your advice for non-native folks?
Please don't feel like that, and please come apply. And then just like that cultural competency, right? Like, let's learn from each other and let's teach each other and bridge that gap, right? So nobody feels like that.
Will do. Great. Thank you. Well, before we close, and to maybe end on a positive note, tell us about a good book or a nugget of wisdom that you'd have to share with us.
Project Beacon actually came from the book Garden of Truth, and I wouldn't say it's really a book. It's kind of more so of a research project, telling them about the research. In Minnesota, they interviewed 105 Indigenous participants who experienced sex trafficking in that area. It's just a great read. The recruitment process, the process that they're working on to healing, getting all that cultural support in place for organizations and programs, and just the statistics and real interviews with actual survivors.
Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for your important work.
Thanks so much, Shayla. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.